A.J. Green has a big game tonight.
You're calling that?
Yep.
Dalton scrambling right. He's going to fire deep down the sideline for A.J. Green. He leaps, high points the ball, and makes the catch. He climbed an invisible ladder. Dalton back to throw. His pass, crossing route, caught by A.J. Green at the 20, 15, 10, and Howard shoves him out of bounds. Here's a pass to A.J. Wiggles out of an ankle tackle and runs into the end zone for a Bengals touchdown.
That's why you A.J. Green, what?
Max just getting everything right today. Week 4 as official. Well, so far. Week 4.
Except for the survivor pool, Mom.
Yeah. We know. I dominated there. The people know this. Week 4 officially kicked off. A.J. Green lit up the Dolphins' defense in the Bengals win. Stephen A., good morning from New York.
Good morning.
Max, how are we doing?
Good. Everything good.
What up?
It is Friday. We are ready to go. We've got a lot to get into, so let's start it off, gentlemen, shall we?
Let's get it party.
Let's do it.
Only a couple of days before the end of his 4-game suspension, multiple violations for the league's substance abuse policy, Josh Gordon has decided to put his return on hold and enter a rehab facility, issuing the following statement. After careful thought and deep consideration, I've decided that I need to step away from pursuing my return to the Browns in my football career to enter an inpatient rehabilitation facility. This is the right decision for me, and one that I hope will enable me to gain full control of my life and continue on a path to reach my full potential as a person. I appreciate the support of the NFL, NFLPA, the Browns, my teammates, my agent, and the community through this extremely challenging process. Executive VP of Football Operations for the Browns, Sashi Brown, released the following statement. We support Josh in taking the step to seek additional help and treatment. His singular focus must be on his own health. We want nothing more than for Josh to be successful personally and professionally, and will not comment on his status with the organization at this time. Stephen A., will we ever see Josh Gordon in the NFL again?
We don't know the answer to that question, but if you asked me to bet my money on it, I would say no. You know, on many occasions, I'm known for telling guys to stay off the weed and all of this other stuff. But this is serious business here. The man's an addict. Let's just call it what it is. He is an addict. There is no other way to slice it. That's what's going on here with Josh Gordon. This is a guy that has failed multiple drug tests. This is a guy that was reinstated by Commissioner Roger Goodell, in July after failing yet another drug test in March. He was slated for reinstatement August 1st, if I remember correctly. But Commissioner Goodell chose to speed up the process, mind you, okay? And if you remember, when he sped up the process, unlike most instances, Josh Gordon was allowed to be around the team, etc., practice, do all of these different things. And so to still find himself in this situation, literally on the verge of his return, speaks to what an addict he is. And I don't say that derogatorily. I don't say that to shove it aside. I don't say it, Max, to be insensitive and incompassionate or whatever the case may be. I wish him nothing but the best. But when you ask the question as to whether or not he will be back in the league, then it comes down to faith. And tell me one reason why anybody should have faith in Josh Gordon. You get paid millions of dollars to play a game you love. You have come at me. You have come at Chris Carter. You came at Charles Barkley in this lengthy letter you wrote in the past when everybody was here on the airwaves saying that you needed help. And time again, you sat up there and you snubbed your nose at folks acting like everybody else was talking and not really knowing what the hell they were talking about. And come to find out, we were right all along. It gives me no pleasure to take this position. I want this man playing a game of football. I want this man earning millions of dollars. But by the way, I'm at a point now, I don't even want to talk about weed. This is something different. It's got to be. There's no way on God's green earth you need to check yourself into an inpatient rehab facility if it's just marijuana we're talking about here. It's got to be more than this. This guy's got a problem. There is no way to look at this. I'm sad, but at the same time, I'm completely disgusted because I can only imagine what this guy went through to put himself in a position to become an NFL player, to earn millions of dollars, to have multiple 16-plus 100-yard seasons like he did the 1 year back in 2013, if I remember correctly. He hasn't played the game since December of 2014. He was suspended prior to that. He's a multiple-time offender. And this is in a league where they essentially let you know when they're going to test you. And yet still, you can't discipline yourself enough to make sure that you're eligible to play the game of football. This is on the verge of him coming back. This is with a new coach in Hugh Jackson. This is with a new executive in Sashi Brown and Deepa Dester. And you got your former teammate, one of your good friends from Baylor, RG3, back with you as a teammate in Cleveland. And somehow, some way, no matter what support system is around you, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what you have to lose, you still find yourself in this situation. I don't know what else to say. He's an addict. And God bless him for getting himself some help. I hope the Browns and everybody else in the NFL community gives him the support that he needs. But at the end of the day, what we were saying about Johnny Manziel, we got to say about Josh Gordon. The difference is Johnny Manziel comes from an affluent background. So somehow, some way, even without football, it's guaranteed that he'll have a roof over his head, clothes on his back, food on his plate. We don't know what the hell's going to happen to Josh Gordon. And it's a damn shame.
Well, the other difference between the two is Josh Gordon succeeded in the biggest possible way on the NFL level. Let me just say, to me, what this reads like is a guy who's about to fail another test. And before that happens, is taking preemptive measures here to secure himself. Okay, good for him. I'd say good for the NFL here. I don't like their drug policy. Why are they testing for marijuana in the first place? I brought this up many times. A league that's in bed with alcoholic beverage companies. They sell it, you know, during commercials, and they do business with them, but they test for weed when every objective study always says for the individual, certainly for society, alcohol is worse than weed, all that. I've said that many times on this show. However, and this is a case where the policy seems to be working, because after all, the drug policy is not, aha, got you, so now you're in trouble. The drug policy is there to try to clean up behavior, drug use, to try to prevent drug use. So here it seems to be working, because the threat of a test even is enough for a guy to say, and maybe it's not that, maybe it's he's come to terms with his own addiction, but I'm cynical about that sort of stuff. The threat of that, the enforcement of that drug policy, has a guy going saying, oh, okay, I'm going to go get myself help. So good for the NFL here, actually, and good for Josh Gordon. Yep. Now, why do I think that this is not the end for Josh Gordon? I believe we will see him on the field again. First of all, even if it's the threat of a test that's doing it, he is of his own accord, whether it's coerced by some force or not, but he is saying before anything happens, I'm going to get myself some treatment. So at least that's a step in the right direction. Josh Gordon is a Hall of Fame talent. Why do I say Hall of Fame talent, Stephen A? Johnny Manziel, we were wondering, can it translate from college into the pros? Not everyone was so sure. He was not the first or second quarterback taken. Josh Gordon on the NFL level, just to give people a sense of who he is, because we talk a lot about outstanding receivers. And, you know, Alshon Jeffrey's an excellent receiver. There are lots of excellent receivers in the NFL that aren't quite on that Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham, you know, we just saw A.J. Green, Julio Jones level. Josh Gordon, when he was 22 years old, you mentioned it, 1,646 yards. When he was, 22, 1,646 yards in 14 games. That per game average yards per game of anyone who's played in the last 30-plus years is second to Calvin Johnson's best season. Overall, forget about age, but when you compare 22-year-olds to him, no other 22-year-old in the history of football went for 1,600 yards. None went for 1,500 yards. Number 2 on the list, Randy Moss, 1,413. Number 3 on the list, Larry Fitzgerald, 1,409. This man went for 1,646 at the age of 22 in 14 games. He is an otherworldly, I bring up Odell Beckham kind of talent, Julio Jones. He's that level talent. And when you have that level talent, and you do have enough of a support system around you to say, to try to protect you, and you yourself are voluntarily checking yourself into treatment, and you're still only 25 years old, you'll make your way to a football field again.
Oh, stop it. Don't give me that nonsense about him voluntarily. He's, like you said earlier, you alluded to it. He probably knew he was going to fail another test, okay? Because it's not just the weed. I didn't even bring up the lean. It's that like liquid heroin stuff that's been put out there that's in these desolate and disenfranchised neighborhoods that's killing our youth right now. Let's not forget that. We can't put it past Josh Gordon that he was on something like that. We don't know. They haven't given us the specifics, but I refuse to believe that this man is just on weed. I refuse to believe it. It's got to be something deeper than that. This man has now cost himself tens of millions of dollars. I told you months ago when we brought up the subject of Josh Gordon, everybody was talking about how great he is, and I sat back and I said, do you know whether or not he's going to be available? Because the best ability is availability. And the fact of the matter is that we didn't know whether or not he was going to be available because he had to at least serve the first 4 games. I repeatedly said right here on this show, sitting right across from you, Max, could you come to me around week 4 or 5 and tell me before he's eligible to play that he's going to definitively be in the lineup? Do you remember me asking that question? And it was rhetorical because I didn't need an answer. The fact is that I had my suspicions. I had my concerns, and they have been validated. And so when you talk about the 1,646 yards, and you talk about the Larry Fitzgerald and the Jerry Rice and the T.O.s and all of this other stuff, all of these other individuals that he's comparable to, it means nothing because they were available. This dude, we don't know where he's going to be. Hell, we don't know where he was.
Look, he obviously has a drug problem. And if it,
yes, he does.
I wouldn't rule out the idea that it's only weed because that's if you're arguing that it's the enforcement of the policy that that pressured him into doing this, then it could just be weed. Although I am reminded of the scene in Half Baked where Chappelle is like laughed out of the rehab center because he's been there for weed, right? And they're hardcore drug addicts there, not to minimize the effect of addiction to any drug. Well, but the point is that if you are acknowledging even that you have to take these steps to save your career, that means your career on some level is very important to you.
He's acknowledged it on several occasions.
And if your career is important to you and you have Hall of Fame talent, by the way, what I didn't mention, Whedon and Campbell and Hoyer were getting him the ball that year when he was 22, went for 1,646 yards.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter.
Stop bringing up his stats and the players. He's not available, man. He's not available.
We have seen countless examples of extreme levels of talent where teams and the league and those around them bend over backwards to give them every single opportunity. So unless you think that he is completely beyond redemption, he will at some point be back on an NFL field.
Max, right now, he ain't even eligible to catch passes from you.
He's 25.
That's how bad it is.
Stephen, he has plenty of time.
Hold on. He's not eligible to catch passes from you. He can't even catch a pass out in the street playing street football. That's how bad off he is.
Right.
There's nothing to talk about here.
There's no future for him. You just said he's never going to be on an NFL field again if you had to bet. And I will take that bet.
If I had to bet.
And I will take the bet. I'll take the bet.
Well, you go ahead and do it. Good luck with that. Weeks ago, you were willing to take the bet then, too. How's it looking for you right now?
Well, I wouldn't say by week 5 I was willing to take the bet, but I'm willing to take the bet at some point he'll be back.
To both of your points, he's a very special talent, and he's very young. But as we all know, and we've seen addiction firsthand, he's battling some demons. And the first step here is that he wins in life before we're worried about winning NFL games.
Molly, you can't get addicted to something that you never try. Maybe the problem is that we're too sympathetic and too damn understanding for folks putting themselves in this position. I know he's bad now, and my heart goes out to him because now he's an addict. But damn, we got to tell folks out there, excuse me, you can't get addicted to something you never try. Stay the hell away from it. There's enough information out there not to put yourself in these positions.
Of course, and I want him to see him win that fight in life and get healthy, not just for him, but for his daughter and his family, and then hopefully because he is such a special talent in his age, he could potentially get back on the football field. But speaking of getting back on the football field, Des Bryant is trying to do just that. His injury is a fracture at the tibial plateau, which is part of the knee joint. Jason Garrett explained why it took so long for the results of the MRI.
He really thought that he was going to get some bad news when he got the MRI on Monday morning. So he, like some of us do in life at times, he avoided it. And he didn't come in and take care of his business. on Monday or Tuesday, and then he came in on Wednesday and took care of that part of it. Des understands that he has a responsibility to be here. And he was completely well-intended. He's a very, very passionate person. He loves football. He loves this team. He's a driven guy. And his response to this was not the right one. It was an understandable response, given his personality and everything he puts into this. He's an emotional person, and he didn't handle it the right way.
Des Bryant issued the following apology on Twitter. I made a poor decision based on how I felt about my knee. Coach JG addressed it to me, and I understood the consequences. Day to day, got great feedback from Dr. Andrews today. Max, from a distance, no inside knowledge. You called this yesterday. That was your instincts. But regardless of that, are you okay with Dez's explanation he gave us here?
I am. Let me start by saying that one of the most important lessons you can teach your kids in life and to learn in life is to face the music, Stephen A. Face that painful moment, because the avoidance of that moment, the fear of it, and the avoiding of that moment, the consequences are usually much worse than just facing that head on. So, of course, it is a place of immaturity that has him avoiding an MRI because he's afraid of what might be there. But this is something that happens to everyone in life in various walks of life, and it is a sign of maturity when you can get past it. It's a kind of a form of magical thinking, really. If I don't, you think you may have something bad, but if you don't get tested for it, then, and we hear this all the time, then you think you might not have it. It's magical thinking. You can wish it away. The question is, what magic was he hoping for? What was he afraid of? He was afraid that the MRI would reveal that he couldn't get on the field. And his wish was that he could get on the field. So while it's extremely immature of him, and in a way, from a rational adult point of view and a professional point of view, irresponsible toward his teammates, as Mark Schlereth and others have pointed out, from a human kind of point of view, I get it. I mean, Mitt Romney didn't write a concession speech to Obama in the last election because he felt that, like, he didn't want to let anything negative enter into his thinking, as though that would affect the vote. That's magical thinking. Even presidential candidates give in to magical thinking. So does Des Bryant. It's not it's not some outlier in his behavior. It's not some rare human event. It happens all the time. And if it's because he wants to stay on the field with his teammates, that's a guy I want on my team. The question is not whether he did something immature. He clearly did. The question is, why did he do it? Was it for good reasons or bad reasons? The answer is good reasons. And then the question is that the kind of player you want? And the answer is, for me, absolutely yes. I want that guy who's willing to sacrifice and risk his health and try anything he can, including magical thinking or avoiding an MRI or whatever the case may be. Because if it's not just magical thinking, then it's like, boy, this really might be torn up, whether or not I get it checked out. I want to be on that field anyway with and for my teammates to try to help win. That guy I want on my team, and I'll bet you his teammates do too, Stephen A.
Well, I don't recall a question being about whether or not somebody wants Des Bryant on their team. Who wouldn't want Des Bryant on their team? The question was, are you okay with his explanation? And the reason why I'm not okay with it is because you're thinking about the immediacy as opposed to the marathon. You know, the NFL season may be 16 games, but that's a long 16-game season. And so you've got to get yourself in there, make sure you address whatever concerns may exist so you can alleviate the concerns and the problems as expeditiously as you possibly can. That's really what it comes down to. But I don't have a problem with Des Bryant. I'm not okay with his explanation, but I don't blame him for it. I blame Jason Garrett. And allow me to explain. Before I do that, let's also draw a distinction between Des Bryant and a guy like Josh Gordon. Even though Des Bryant didn't have those kind of problems, Des Bryant had his issues. Des Bryant, as far as I'm concerned, has been nothing short of a model citizen for the last several years, for the last 2 to 3 years. I don't recall any issues, any problems with him whatsoever. He might get a little bit emotional, but it's in a good way. But more importantly, it's injuries that take him out, nothing else. The responsibility that comes along with being a professional is something that he obviously embraces, and whatever hiccups may have taken place in his life in the past was something that he clearly has gone about the business of alleviating, and he deserves props for that. Josh Gordon, compassion and all of that stuff comes with it, but he's an addict, and that needs to get addressed. Now back to Jason Garrett. The reason why I'm not okay with Bryant's explanation is because I think it speaks to a culture that exists with Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett, to me, is a glorified cheerleader disguised as a head coach. I mean, I look at him as somebody that's quick to pat guys on the back and the shoulders and chest bump with them and do all of this other stuff. But when it comes to the accountability business, I don't look at him the way I look at a Jimmy Johnson, a Bill Parcells, even a Mike McCarthy, a Mike Tomlin, and others. He doesn't seem to be that kind of guy. They seem to be more concerned with staying in Dallas because they love being in Dallas, playing in the billion-dollar playpen of Jerry Jones, playing for Jerry Jones, who's known to take care of his players. They seem to be more concerned with that than making sure they appease their head coach, which is Jason Garrett, because ultimately he's not the decision maker. And I think the way he conducts himself, he comes across as just that. The only difference between Jason Garrett and the rest of those assistant coaches and stuff is that he's the one that's obligated to stand before the media on a daily basis and answer questions. That's about it. In terms of accountability, he's not the guy they have to be accountable to, and I think his behavior shows that.
But
so as a result,
is that a Garrett issue or a Jerry Jones issue?
Well, it's a both issue, because as far as I'm concerned, a Bill Parcells, for example, is not there because that's not something he would tolerate. A Jimmy Johnson is somebody that's not there because that's not something
Sounds like
he
a
would
Jerry
tolerate.
Jones issue to me.
Well, let me explain. I'm saying it's a Jason Garrett issue because he's willing to accept the conditions that Jerry Jones places on a head coach, even though it strips you of your potency to be the kind of head coach you need to be in order to be successful on the NFL level. Whereas Jason Garrett, it seems like as long as he's got the Dallas job, he's happy, even if there's no considerable power that comes with it. I think it trickles down to the players. I think they know that when it comes to him, they don't have to be but so accountable. And as a result, stuff like this happens.
So you'd say the same thing about Wade Phillips then?
Yeah.
Right, that's what I mean. It's a Jerry Jones issue. Whoever you see in the head coaching position in Dallas is not going to be a Parcells, is not going to be a Jimmy Johnson. It's the same issue actually in Washington, and in basically in the same way, where the players feel emboldened because they get the sense that Dan Snyder, they have a direct line to, and they can circumvent the front office or the coaching staff. They may indeed feel that way in Dallas too, but that's not really a Garrett issue, because whoever occupies that post is going to be in the same position, because that's the job description.
Well, that's just, but that's nitpicking. I'm mentioning Jason Garrett because he happens to be the head coach of record for the Dallas Cowboys at this moment in time. You got to remember, Parcells, okay, you needed to come to Parcells because of what life was like from Barry Switzer era on. So you had to ultimately go to Parcells because that wasn't working for you. And then when you had a modicum of success with Parcells because you were at least able to get to the playoffs once or twice, then you go back to getting the Jason Garrett types of the world to come in as a head coach because you're Jerry Jones and it was all about you, and it's not about, the head coach allowing him to do his job. I'm saying those are the kind of things that lend itself towards Des Bryant acting this way and skipping a test or whatever. I don't think that's something that would have ever happened with the Bill Parcells or the Jimmy Johnson era. That's all I'm trying to say.
I think it may have happened no matter who was the coach. This is the kind of guy, Des. This is the reason I could guess what happened based on he's been unfairly criticized, Des Bryant, because he's been emotional on the sidelines when he's really just cheering on his teammates. Yep. He plays hard. He plays hurt. He tries to do whatever he can. And this situation is no different. I just want to get on the field. Maybe if I don't get tested, there's not anything really wrong. That's the magical thinking part. Or maybe even if there is something wrong, I'm saying even if there is something wrong, then I'm willing to risk my future because I'm trying to get on the football field now. That's the kind of player you want. And if you're a Bill Parcells or any kind of a winning coach, whether or not you love the maturity level or the kind of rational thinking of Des Bryant, you gotta love the fighting heart of Des Bryant. I think a guy like Parcells would love Des Bryant.
You can love the fighting heart of a player, and I hear Molly there nodding in affirmation. I don't care.
How do you
can sit up
nodding?
there. You can just well, you said yeah. I mean, I hear you. I'm nodding.
For Des right now. We never show the Cowboys love on this show.
Well, let me be very, very clear. The fact of the matter is that you could love his heart and still think it was idiotic. Because the fact of the matter is that if you don't go to get tested and you procrastinate and it ends up being a bit too serious or whatever, or not serious enough rather, and it's something that you could have addressed a bit earlier, that's not a wise decision for you to make. It's not wise for you to be thinking about. Well, that's what I just said. So my point to you is that
sometimes fighters
that's what I just said.
Sometimes fighters need to be protected from themselves. Sometimes football
and sometimes
players
they don't. And sometimes they don't.
But in this case, he did, and when they found out, they corrected
I don't think so.
Testy on a Friday,
Really?
but I like it.
Corrected.
Are you guys ready? We'll go to break. I'll throw it up one more time.
I'm always ready, Molly. I don't know if you've noticed.
Oh, this just in. I know
He is always ready.
I'm always
you
ready.
are a gamer, and you know what else, Stephen A? You always bring it as well. We want you guys to weigh in at home. Are you buying Des Bryant's excuse? Go on the First Take Twitter page to vote. We'll share those results a little later in the show. But coming up, Bill Belichick has dominated the series against Rex Ryan coach teams. Will that continue on Sunday? Damian Woody, he knows a little something about those coaches. He'll join us with that answer next. Today is the 15th anniversary of Tom Brady's first start, but you'll have to wait one more week to see TB12. As for who will be under center in Foxborough Sunday when Rex Ryan and the 1-2 Bills come to town, the jury's still out. And speaking of the number 15, Bill Belichick and Rex Ryan go head-to-head for the 15th time. Belichick has gotten the best of Rex 11 times. So whether it's the rookie Jacoby Brissett or Jimmy G, and with Buffalo coming off a dominating performance over Arizona, we welcome Damian Woody to the desk. You know a little something about these teams. How we doing?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Going on, stranger?
Stranger? No, I had to let the set cool down, man. When you come out here spitting fire, you gotta let it cool down a little bit.
I know that bright yellow shirt ain't helping to simmer down anything, right? That bright yellow tie.
That's my personality, bro. How it shines on the set.
I'm just saying, you ain't, why you leaning like that, like you trying to do something to me? Because I pointed out your bright yellow tie. If I was wearing it, you would have had something to say.
Man,
why you looking like you got attitude for?
Man, don't be intimidated by my swag, bro.
Stephen A's going casual Friday today. No tie.
I like
casual
the
Friday.
Look, Stephen A. All right, let's get into it.
Let's go.
Are you giving the Bills a shot?
First of all, when I heard that you guys wanted me to come on, wanted me to come on here to talk about, do the Bills actually have a shot? That is so disrespectful. So disrespectful that you're asking whether one professional team has a shot to beat another one. Listen, there is no bounds to Coach Belichick's genius and how he gets the Patriots prepared. But come on now, let's really look at this whole thing. We all know Tom Brady's not playing, and Rex Ryan-led defense has given Tom Brady fits in the past, let alone a Jimmy Garoppolo or a Jacoby Brissett. So you know Rex is going to have some type of crazy game plan ready for those young bucks at quarterback. Okay? Number two, we got a new offensive coordinator, a guy who's only called plays one game in his whole professional career. So now it brings a whole set of unpredictability to the game. There's no scouting report on Anthony Lynn or anything like that. So actually, the Patriots are going kind of blind into the game because there's no tendencies on the Buffalo Bills. You still have to contend with Tyrod Taylor. They still have weapons. They have Shady McCoy. But to sit here and say that the Bills don't have a shot, Stephen A., that they don't have a shot against the Patriots? Listen, I love the Patriots up like the next person, but come on, bro. That's real disrespectful. You know that. That's real disrespectful.
Well, first of all, don't tell me what I know. I'm the elder statesman here, not you, young buck. You're a big boy, but you're still young. All right, here's the deal. Don't tell me what I know.
I don't have Similac on the breath, though.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. We'll see.
He's got gravy on the breath.
How about that? But here's the deal. You're talking as if Rex Ryan deserves respect. Rex Ryan has gone 5+ seasons consecutively without making the playoffs. Rex Ryan was 0-2. Going into the game against Arizona and Carson Palmer last week, he was on the verge, in some people's eyes, of potentially not even lasting this season. They came to his rescue on their home turf. None of us have an answer as to why the Arizona Cardinals don't seem to be themselves. But let's be clear. The Buffalo Bills have been an extreme disappointment since Rex Ryan has arrived. mainly because last year he finally had a quarterback and a decent offense, and their defense didn't step up to the challenge. Now let's go to this week. You're going up against the New England Patriots. You're going up against a Patriot squad, albeit coached by Bill Belichick. They don't have Tom Brady. Their second string and third string quarterbacks are both injured, okay? We don't know who's going to quarterback. It might end up being their wide receiver, Julian Edelman, who was a quarterback at Kent State in college, okay? And yet and still, you've got all of this pressure to bear, and what do? Do you sit back, be quiet, and let everything come to you? No. You still go up there as usual, bloviating about what you want to do, faking like you're a reporter trying to coax Edelman into telling you who's going to be the quarterback for this week. Get all sensitive and up in a tizzy when everybody reminds you that you're 4-11 against Belichick, that your winning percentage against him is lower than it is against any other coach in the National Football League. So you get an attitude with the media and start answering every question. To me, instead of laying low and keeping the spotlight off himself, once again, he's found a way to bring the spotlight on himself, and I think this team is ill-equipped to handle it on the road. If they were in Buffalo, it would be different, but I would be shocked if they beat the Patriots, even with the Patriots' issues, if they beat the Patriots in Gillette Stadium, because I think the jury is out on Rex Ryan as to whether or not he should even be a head coach in this league, let alone in with the Buffalo Bills in the AFC East right now. I don't think it's disrespectful at all.
Hey, Stephen A., let me ask you, first of all, let me tell you this. Rex Ryan's got to be who he is, because we all know as players, as a former player, if your coach is not authentic, players see right through you, they lose respect for you. That's number one. It's funny that you brought up the Arizona Cardinals game last week. After the Bills got smoked by the Jets, did you believe that the Bills going to beat the Arizona Cardinals?
I did not.
No, you didn't. You didn't. So going back to the original question, do we even think that the Buffalo Bills have a shot? You didn't even think they had a shot against the Arizona Cardinals.
You're not listening. I was talking about Bill Belichick.
No, okay,
Rex against Bill Belichick.
But my point is, the question was, do we think that the Bills have a shot of beating the New England Patriots?
I don't believe it.
All right.
I don't believe it.
A professional team.
Damian, don't you want the answer? After all this, talk about bloviating, don't you two want the answer? Because I have the answer right here.
Okay.
Do they have a shot?
Fill me in.
Do they have a shot? The answer is yes, they do have a shot.
Of course you were going to say that.
Now you can pick. Well, New England's correctly favored at home, but you can point to the fact that during the regular season, Rex Ryan's Bills are 0-7 against Belichick at Foxborough, right? You can point to that. You wouldn't be wrong. And that he's on the hot seat probably. I mean, let's face it. They lose to the Ravens by one score on the road. Okay. They lose to the Jets at home, who when they're clicking on all cylinders, can have a really high-powered offense. But they were at home also by one score. And then they beat up on an Arizona team that some people still have in the top 5 power rankings. Now, why did they beat up on Arizona? Are they getting used to each other? Are they getting used to Rex changing things? Or maybe that he is an embattled coach, and he's a player's coach. And you know what happens to players' coaches whose players like him when he's embattled? They play for him. I think they played for Rex Ryan against Arizona. I think they're going to play for him at Foxborough against Bill Belichick, against a rookie quarterback, however you slice it. By the way, right now tied for third most sacks in the NFL with 10. That'd be your Buffalo Bills. Third best turnover differential. That'd be your Buffalo Bills. They got a shot in this game. Also, by the way, it's to say nothing of the fact that we all knew no Brady. All right, they're probably going to go 3-1 anyway. And they'll probably win a game they're supposed to lose and maybe lose a game they're supposed to win. They've won the game they were supposed to lose. Maybe this is the game they lose that they're supposed to win. The Bills absolutely have a shot in this game, Stephen A.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because they have a shot, but then you tell us how you understand the other side. Then you come back to the other side about how they have a shot. I really appreciate you covering yourself because nobody does it better than you.
Thank you.
But here's the reality of the situation. At the end of the day, I'm talking about Rex Ryan. I'm not talking about the Bills' talent. I'm not talking about the Patriots. I'm talking about Rex Ryan against Bill Belichick. I'm talking about
Sammy
Rex
Watkins.
Ryan being flustered. Exactly. I got that. But the point that I'm trying to make to you is that That's what I'm talking about here, Damian Woody. I am undressing Rex Ryan because I think it's time that somebody do that. This man has gotten enough of a pass. If you can't beat a third-string quarterback, I don't know if you should be allowed to go into Week 5. And I'm not sure that Buffalo with Rex Ryan is going to be able to pull it off. I got no questions about their talent. I think they got enough talent. I think their coaching is an issue right now. And the reason why I was laughing with what Max just had to say, because he said, what do players, coaches usually do when their coach is embattled? You know, they play for them. Well, excuse me, if you love the coach so much, why the hell did you let him get to the point where he's embattled?
Well,
how come you couldn't produce more prior to being embattled?
The Houston Texans was shut out by a third-string quarterback. So you calling for Billy O'Brien's head too?
Not at all.
We just call, are we just going to call for everybody's head who lose to the Patriots?
Just Rex Ryan.
Is that what it is?
I said Rex Ryan.
Listen, that's
I said Rex Ryan, but I got a list. I got a list.
Being in New York, you know how Rex operate. You know how he gets down.
And I haven't been pleased for 5 years. That's what I'm telling you.
All right.
Yeah.
What's the problem?
I mean,
there is no problem.
I'm just telling you. You pleased with what you see for 5 years? Are you pleased with what you see for 5 years?
No, I'm not, and I'm sure he's not. But to sit here and say that the Buffalo Bills don't have a shot?
Yeah.
Come on now. Come on, Stephen A.
This week, against Bill Belichick, Rex Ryan doesn't have a shot. I don't believe it.
You got a shot.
I just don't.
Okay.
They got a good shot.
Let's leave it there. But at the end of the day, if you guys were betting your money, you'd pick the Patriots.
Yeah.
But Bills Mafia is loving you right now. We will leave it there.
I didn't say I was picking the Bills. I'm picking the Patriots.
Look at you. I didn't say I didn't say all of that for nothing. All of that for nothing. All of that for nothing.
Unbelievable. The hypocrisy over here. And leave it to me to have to be the only one on this set to still pick the Patriots.
Yeah, exactly. Wilson has never missed a start in his NFL career and plans on continuing that streak against the Jets on Sunday. Even though he's dealing with a sprained left knee, Ryan Fitzpatrick, coming off the worst performance of his career. He threw a career-worst 6 interceptions and also lost 2 fumbles and a loss to the Chiefs. Eric Decker was also injured in that game with a shoulder injury. His status is still in question. Since 1995, listen to the stat, West Coast teams have only won 35% of early games played in the Eastern time zone. Very interesting. The odds stacked against them there. Damian Woody still here with us. So what do you think? Can Seattle get it done, that early game in East Rutherford, traveling east?
Absolutely. Listen, this is not anything that's foreign to them. They did it last year against the Baltimore Ravens, albeit with Joe Flacco out with a season-ending injury. Listen, here's the one thing that you have to know about Seattle. They have the #1 defense, and the last time I checked, you can pack up that defense going rain, sleet, hail, snow, time zone. It travels everywhere. So you can say, oh, the Seahawks are playing basically at 10 a.m. in the morning, but it doesn't matter because with that defense, it's going to keep you in every game. And last time I checked, they got Russell Wilson at quarterback. So they can absolutely win this 1 o'clock game in East Rutherford.
Yes, they can. They can win the game. In fact, I expect them to win the game. What quiet is kept, there's a dynasty going on in Seattle right now. And in football, like Stephen A's Steelers had a dynasty where they won in 2 in a row and then 2 more. So very quickly they had 4 championships. That never happened before or since. It's, in the Super Bowl era. That doesn't happen. Mostly dynasties in the NFL. An extreme example is the Patriots. They don't win back-to-back-to-back championships, but they're always making playoff runs. They win some Super Bowls, and they're always a top 2 or 3 team in the AFC. Like, the Broncos were better than them last year. I think the Broncos are better than them this year. But I would still say that that Belichick has got his dynasty still going, even though there are kind of interruptions in competition. Same thing with Seattle. You got Carolina last year. You had the Niners pushing them before that, and sometimes getting past them, once getting past them. But this is the Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll, Seattle dynastic era in the NFC. Even last year, they were dangerous in the playoffs. So you talk about that level team. Russell Wilson's going to play. They're 5 out of their last 6 on the road. They are 5-1 in their last 6 games against AFC East teams. Fitzpatrick seems to revert to more kind of normal form for him throughout his career where he's mistake-prone. He will throw picks. And you got a Seattle secondary, while it's very good, it's second in the league, fewest points allowed, but it doesn't have a pick yet. Well, that's not going to continue. There's going to be what's called regression to the mean. If you continually play good defense, you're going to come away with some. I have every reason to believe, in spite of the stat you gave, Molly, that Seattle not only has a chance to win, they will win this game against the Jets.
Damian Woody, I don't know if you know this or not, but Max is an extremely intelligent and sophisticated individual whose vocabulary is far more expansive than mine, yours, and most other people. So when he says the word dynasty, even though we predict that it's something that we think we know, I still felt the need to look it up in the dictionary because Lord knows what different definition Max will find. And sure enough, he's managed to pull it off. Because last time I checked, a sequence of rulers or whatever, that's one of the definitions of a dynasty. So essentially, it implies that you're number one. Well, Seattle has been in the playoffs the last 4 years. They've only finished as a champion once. They lost another Super Bowl, and they have 2 divisional playoff losses.
Sounds
but
like
somehow that's Max's definition of a dynasty.
The NFL,
Good luck with that. Makes no sense to me. Makes no sense to me.
Hold on, 2 Super Bowl appearances in 4 years and a win?
Well, listen, there can only be one dynasty. And if there's going to be one dynasty, I would give it to the Patriots before I can give it to
Can't you say
Seattle.
they're competing NFC dynasty versus AFC dynasty?
No. There's one dynasty. When it's a dynasty, it's one. One.
in Max's
One.
definition.
There can't be
more than
multiple,
one.
okay? Not in the same sport, okay? So here's the point. It doesn't apply here. But the point that I'm trying to make is this. I got the Jets winning this game. I got the Jets winning this game against the number 2 ranked overall defense, number 1 in yards allowed, number 2 against the pass. It's formidable and legit and big time as Seattle's defense is. Russell Wilson having those injuries to both legs. A knee on one leg, I think an ankle on the other, or a high sprain. I'm concerned about his mobility. I've been concerned about their offense all season long. And I think after that debacle of a performance by Ryan Fitzpatrick last week where he was god-awful, he's only completing 55% of his passes right now. He's got 3 touchdowns and 7 interceptions on the season. I just think that he's got to make amends for that. I love the fact that Darrelle Revis is on the record saying this is a must-win, that the players are adopting that mentality, and it's on their home turf. Had they had to travel, there's no way I would have picked them. But because it's at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, because of the debacle that they had last season, because there's such a level of urgency attached to this particular week, is formidable and is big time as Seattle's defense is, I'm inclined to go with the Jets this week.
By the way, I said no, they haven't come away with the ball. They have one takeaway, the Seattle defense. But if you're the second in points, if you're among the top 3 teams against the pass, that's going to change. You're going to come away with the ball more often. I mean, that's a very good. Even last year, which wasn't their year, and they have a porous offensive line. Obviously, it's one of the reasons that Russell Wilson's hurt right now. Even with those deficiencies, Seattle's going to win more games than they lose every year. They're going to make the playoffs. They'll probably make a run once they get there. And that's been the opposite of the Jets with the chips on the line last year. Fitzpatrick had to win one game. That he had one of his worst games of the season. He's coming off the worst game of the season for him so far. And now he's facing this secondary, even with the advantages in time travel in terms of going west to east for Seattle. I still like Seattle.
Listen, if I was a betting man, I'm not betting on the. Why would I bet on Fitzpatrick? I didn't say Fitzpatrick. I said Pickpatrick, because that's what the last memory I have burned in my head was seeing 6 picks in Arrowhead Stadium. And you're going against one of the best, maybe the best defense in the National Football League.
Not pick 6. 6 picks.
6 picks.
And he might not have Decker.
Listen, I hope they win, because listen, I play for the Jets. I think people know how I feel about the Jets, but I'm rolling with Seattle.
All right.
Okay. See y'all Sunday on Monday.
Okay.
They are an NFC dynasty, Stephen A. I hate to tell you.
Let's not go back there for that debatable subject. We will discuss this all on Monday. Seattle and that traveling defense, they're favored by 2.5 in Jersey. Damian, always good to have you. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
come back again soon.
Next time, wear a tie when I come on set. When I come on set, man, wear a tie.
He said, put some respect on your clothes.
You don't tell
me
what to wear.
Royalty right now.
You don't tell me that. Royalty. Royalty.
You gotta put some respect on my name.
You need to put some respect here. You are a guest in this house,
You
man.
knew I was coming,
Watch
so you
your
had
mouth.
to be on. You had to be remote. I see how it is.
To paraphrase Wu-Tang, he said, respect your neck, Stephen A. Put a tie on
Don't
it.
come with that bright yellow tie blinding our viewers
right.
next time. You better change
Coming
that tie.
up next, the Cowboys are expected to be without Des Bryant this weekend against the 49ers. But is it a must-win for America's team? I will explain after the break. Will Kane will join us for that conversation. Entering week 4, the Cowboys head to the Bay Area to take on the Niners. The Cowboys are riding a 2-game win streak while the Niners are on a 2-game losing streak with issues at the quarterback position. Here's Dallas' schedule over the next 6 games. Take a look at this. So after Sunday, the road for Dallas not getting any easier. The Cowboys have the Bengals at home. They travel to Green Bay. They host the Eagles, go on the road for back-to-back games against the Browns and Steelers, then face the Ravens at Jerry's World. Will Kane is in the house.
Good morning.
To see you, as always. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Is this a must-win game for Dallas?
No, I mean by definition, it's not a must-win game. What happens? I mean, you're already getting upset, Max. What happens if the Cowboys lose? Does Jason Garrett get fired? Does Dak Prescott get benched? Do they not make the playoffs?
Probably not.
Are they guaranteed 8-8 or 7-9? No, no, no. No to all of that. Thus, by definition, it's not a must-win game. It would be better if you beat the 49ers. I think they will beat the 49ers. But you look at this schedule and you point this out, and Stephen A. so happily pointed this out to me earlier in the week. The schedule gets very tough for the Cowboys. Bengals, Packers, Eagles. Well, you know what I think about that? I don't think you know anything. And as much as I would love that to be a unique circumstance of Stephen A. Smith, I don't think any of us know anything. I don't think we know who's good. I don't think we know who's bad. And I would just remind you, at this time last year, the Buffalo Bills looked very good. And as Stephen A. again happily pointed out to me, so did the Cowboys, who were 2-1, neither of which made the playoffs. So you know nothing. It's not a must-win game.
Week 3, it is true, we don't have enough evidence yet to really understand the schedule unless our preconceived notions coming into the season have been corroborated by what we've seen so far, which it hasn't, because the Eagles just smoked the Steelers, for example. So are the Eagles for real? Are the Steelers the team we thought they were? We don't know. We just don't know. Looking at that schedule for the Cowboys, it looks like a pretty standard issue NFL schedule at this point. But given what we know of so far about the Cowboys and what we thought coming into the season, and the same applying that the same to those other teams, that doesn't look much better than 500 if the Cowboys play kind of as well as they can, particularly without Des Bryant. I don't see them winning more than half those games, but I can see them losing more than half those games.
Well, I'd like to add this. First things first. I don't know who the hell let you on national television with that shirt, Will. We'll have to discuss that another time because
Who
I don't know what the hell that was
complimented your
about.
show when I saw you watching the
You didn't
But
know. And let me tell you, you want to have a style debate? We can do that as well, because I'm ready to go on that one.
You know, you can't even mess around. Don't even do that to yourself, bro. Don't even do that to yourself.
Now
let me get to football. Now let me get to football. Here's the deal. The Dallas Cowboys, this is a must-win. Because I could see the Dallas Cowboys losing 4 of their next 6 games after this game against San Francisco. I mean, you're gonna beat the Browns. You might win one more of those games. But between the Bengals, the Packers, the Steelers, the Ravens, the Eagles, I'm sorry. I could see the Dallas Cowboys losing about 4 of those games. So to me, this is absolutely a must-win for the Dallas Cowboys, particularly with Des Bryant hobbled. And I think that the more games that Dak Prescott plays, the more you get to figure him out. I'm not saying he's not talented. I like the kid, and the kid can play, and he's got promise. But you are a 4th rounder for a reason. And I think ultimately at this juncture, even though, far down the road, I think he's going to be big time. At this particular juncture, when they figure this guy out a little bit more, and require him to do more, I think he's going to have some troubles. And I can see the Dallas Cowboys as a result having those troubles. But when you say, Will, that it's not a must-win because nobody's getting fired, that's all you got? Nobody's getting fired. The same people are going to keep their jobs. I mean, that's where we're going now?
What's
that
the
doesn't make any
definition?
sense.
Help me out here. What's the definition of a must-win?
Well, we're talking about it being a must-win because if you don't get this done, the possibility of you overcoming that loss
Making the
and
playoffs.
becoming successful for this particular season it ain't going to happen.
Okay,
That's
let's
what
dig
saying.
in on that a little bit. First of all, let's
Sure.
just grant both Stephen A. and Max the premise that the best the Cowboys may do coming out of this schedule is 500, which, by the way, I reject, but for the purposes of this nice little conversation, I'll accept. If you told the Cowboys at the beginning of the season that you're not going to have Tony Romo until mid-November and you're going to be without Dez for some
They'd have been
extended
like,
period of time,
we're not going to have Tony Romo until mid-November.
and at the end of that time frame, you will be 500. They would have said that's a pretty sweet place to be, because I will remind you as well, the Eagles, the Giants, and the Redskins all have to play virtually the same schedule. Tougher, actually, because the Cowboys got last place in that division. So if you think the Packers are really scary, or you think the Steelers are really scary, all of these teams have to play them. They all have to see that schedule. And the Giants and Redskins see it late in the season. They see it in December. So it's a 16-game season. I've listened to your show this morning, Stephen A. That's a long time. The only thing you can count on is change. Here's what's going to change with the Cowboys. Tony Romo's going to come back at some point. Des Bryant's going to come back at some point. Orlando Scandrick will get healthy. Tyron Smith will get healthy. And this one, I guarantee you, Dak Prescott will continue to improve. If you want to bet on a rookie quarterback who defenses are going to figure out, bet on Carson Wentz, the guy who had no preseason tape to give anyone. Dak, at this point, has given you nothing but confidence, making your must-win 500 prediction really shaky.
Well, let me tell you what's laughable about your position. The fact that you sat up there, with your little soliloquy there, you sat up there and talk about with the Cowboys is change. I would challenge the notion that there is change. As far as I'm concerned, the Cowboys consistently look the same to me. Somehow, some way, they get in their own way at the most inopportune time to screw up their season. It's who they are. It's who they've been. It's who they will continue to be. Now, the causes for that could be a multitude of issues. It could be injuries. It could be injuries to the quarterback. It could be injuries to the wide receiver. It could potentially be a quarterback controversy. It could be weed, a la Randy Gregory, DeMarcus Lawrence, or whomever else. It could be more. It could be your secondary issues. It could be anything. With the Cowboys, all we know for sure is that something tends to get in their way. We don't know what, but we know something
let me tell
will
you
happen
what.
because it's who they are.
Let me tell you what. The Cowboys are not so good that they can lose the games they got to win. They got to win the winnable games on their schedule, particularly with the injuries, and you're assuming Tony Romo comes back fully healthy and then stays fully healthy. I think that's quite an assumption. And even if that doesn't happen, that Dak Prescott continues to improve in a kind of linear way where he just gets better and better and better, hits no rookie wall, they don't adjust to him.
But he's giving you no reason to doubt that, Max. He's giving you no reason to doubt that.
The history of quarterbacks and the history of sports gives you reason to doubt it. But no, I think is he the real deal? Yes. He's going to have a good career if he stays healthy? Sure. I believe that is true. I think we've seen enough I've seen enough to confidently say I believe in Dak Prescott. But as a rookie, as the season wears on, I'm not so sure. The 49ers have still not figured out that they can't start Blaine Gabbert. This is like, they're seeing the 49ers, unlike most of the rest of the league, right before Colin Kaepernick comes back, who's a much better quarterback. You have to win this game. Also, the Cowboys aren't going to win out at home. I mean, they lost the first week of the season to the Giants. You got to win on the road sometimes. This is a road game you have to win against a less than, at their best, not good franchise at the moment.
I just think you're conflating games you should win with games you must win. Must wins seem to have repercussions. Should wins are just disappointing when you lose. This game is a should win. By the way, I think it's a little scarier than we're all giving credit to. I think it's one of those trap games. I think there's a lot of distractions for the Cowboys this week. And one last point, just on this idea that Stephen A. loves, that everything that can go wrong will go wrong with the Cowboys. It certainly hits home to a neurotic Cowboy fan who sees injuries pile up. But you don't think that Redskin fans feels like things go wrong as they look at putting Josh Dobson on IR? They don't think things go wrong when Kirk Cousins throws an interception in the end zone?
They're not the ones proclaiming to be America's team. Your team is.
That has
that's
no
the
bearing.
Damn
That's nice and that's
it
cute.
Has every bearing.
But that has no bearing on whether or not if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. The point I'm making is every fan base can look at instances like that.
Beneath the pressure.
And if I'm looking for things that didn't go wrong, I found a franchise quarterback in the 4th round. How's your franchise doing?
Oh, please. Excuse me. I don't think you know what you found yet. 3 games does not make a season, nor does it make a career. We shall see. You can believe all you want about Dak Prescott. It's not firm. It's not etched in stone. That's what you believe because you're desperately looking for something to believe in because you haven't had much to believe in when it comes to the Cowboys in more than 20 years.
All I can say is, as a Giants fan, there are 2 franchises in the NFC East that I have, the Eagles are a separate issue. They haven't won a Super Bowl ever, right? But it's not like I look at them and think, boy, that's an incompetently run franchise. There's a problem in ownership that trickles down to the rest of the team. But as a Giants fan, when I look at the Washington franchise and when I look at the Cowboys, I say, thank you.
Well,
thank you.
All
Jerry
I have to
Jones
say
and
is
Danny
Will
Snyder
just
are
threw shots, and that was a drop the mic moment, but you can't leave.
Just to leave it here, that's easy for a Giants fan to say.
Yes,
a franchise where things go right, like winning Super Bowls based on a helmet catch. I understand you feel like you have angels on your
Then what happened the next time? Same thing.
Something happened.
Something happened. That's right. That's
Oh,
right.
Lord.
Something happened.
Let's leave it there.
We really don't have reason to trust the NFL, and I don't think they mind either way. At the end of the day, they're going to do what they have to do to make their money and to make as much money as they can for the owners. And our union is going to do what they can to protect the interests of the players and the rights of the players and help them make as much money as possible. And that's the way it's always going to be. They're a bottom line business. If you can increase their bottom line, then they'll love you. They'll do everything they can to put you out more, to market you, to make sure the fans buy your jersey, to put your jersey out because it makes them more money. If you're not making them money, then at the end of the day, they're going to find somebody else.
That was Richard Sherman on the Players Tribune blasting the NFL for their relationship with the players. Will, I want to start with you here. What was your reaction to Sherman's comments?
Well, I'll tell you my reaction, first of all, was that it was so. I mean, what's your point, Richard? That you didn't just describe the NFL. You described the world. You described business in general. Let me do this, and this is not throat clearing. I think this is worth saying. I genuinely find Richard Sherman a very interesting person. He says unpredictable things. He says things that you wouldn't expect, as though a talking points list was given to him. He seems to be independently thinking, and therefore I want to listen to him, and I respect what he has to say. And then the ultimate sign of respect in my mind is not blind agreement, but pointing out where you're wrong. And as I've said several times on the show, in that way, he reminds me of Stephen A. Stephen A. will be unpredictable, say what he thinks, isn't beholden to any particular expectation of him. And the sign of respect to give someone in that scenario is to then tell them where they're wrong. And that's what I would say with Richard Sherman is you're just being a little naive. I mean, or you're being childish and bellyaching. I mean, the world works by incentive. The world works by people getting value out of each other, and that's specifically what the business world is. It is about the bottom line. Show me the business that's not. Is it NPR? Is that where we're going to go? Should the NFL run like public radio? Business is about making money. So what? The NFL is. And yes, every business, including ESPN, the NFL, and the corner store with their employees, will use you up and replace you when there's somebody better and cheaper.
But
that's the world. Don't complain about it. If Richard Sherman is just recognizing it,
right,
fine, that's great. But I don't think he's just recognizing it, Max. I think he's lamenting it. He's painting the NFL as a villain, which is a very popular and easy thing to do these days.
Look, I agree. We're not breaking new ground here. He's stating the obvious. But there's a difference between the NFL and, say, the NBA, because tackle football is dangerous, and therefore it's not like a Marxist argument where it's like all work is exploitation. No, some work is more exploitative than others. I work in the boxing industry. I recognize fans and networks are essentially exploiting boxers. That's essentially what's going on. It doesn't make it, it's a guilty pleasure, fine, whatever. Am I a hypocrite? Whatever. I like watching boxing, nevertheless. And I'm a consumer of it and an advocate for it. But I recognize that it is exploiting fighters. Same thing in football. It exploits labor differently than basketball, for example, because it's dangerous. Just like coal mining exploits labor differently than bartending. You know, it's more exploitative because it's dangerous. And so if someone who works in a dangerous industry in which labor will always necessarily be exploited differently because of the risks it poses to their health, then another industry points that out, particularly in an industry where you have like the NFL cares and you see a heart beating on the screen. What does that have to do with football? But the NFL on some level has recognized that, boy, we better get out in the community and show how good we are because we are exploiting these players. I think it is different than simply saying, hey, this is the nature of business.
I want to let Stephen A. in, but I've got a rebuttal. You want to jump in?
Go ahead.
My rebuttal is this. It's the definition of exploiting someone is not the level of danger in their employment. This football, just like coal mining, is a matter of choice. The people that go into that industry have a choice to go into that industry. They do so voluntarily. And it's a little bit hard to stomach that it's this awful exploitative business that, oh, by the way, you're getting paid millions to do. It's a little hard to compare the NFL to coal mining in that way. I would say...
I'm making the analogy between the NFL and NBA, coal mining to bartending. I'm not saying the NFL
And
is
I'm
coal
telling
mining.
you, the definition of exploitive isn't that it's dangerous. It's rather whether or not you're forced or fraudulently guided into something. And I don't think these players are. I think they're choosing to go into the NFL. I think everybody in the world wants a villain. Life is easier with villains. It gives you definition and meaning to point out bad guys. But the guy that has created a game for you that creates millions of dollars of potential employment might not just be your villain.
Talk to NFL players. If any of them could play in the NBA, or the vast majority of young athletes or athletes who thought they may have a choice would choose the NBA over the NFL. You have longer careers, you get paid more, you have guaranteed contracts, and it's not as dangerous. You play in the NFL because you can.
TV stars would choose to be movie stars. That's no point of exploitation that they're not.
Well, because you're denying the level of physical danger and whether or not that plays into an equation of exploitation, which I think it does.
Will, I appreciate your point of view. I understand it, and I feel the same way about a lot of things that you say. And there's nothing but respect, you know, in terms of disagreeing with you. I like that. It doesn't bother me at all. I get upset when people get on folks like yourself and others just because you have a different perspective. That's nonsense. And I totally agree with your assessment, how you classified me. But let me be very, very clear. I think in this particular situation, you're missing the boat. You are absolutely right with what you say as it pertains to the business of corporate America and how it's a bit exploitative, but so what? Because you know what you're getting into. You're being paid to provide a service, et cetera, et cetera. No matter what line of business you're talking about, corporate America, you're in the business to make money. That's the way that it goes. I think when you see somebody like Richard Sherman stepping up and lamenting the state of affairs that exist as it pertains to player relationships with the NFL, it primarily involves the hypocrisy, because you can be about the business of making money without being a hypocrite. If somebody makes you money by being a professional and taking care of their end of the bargain and you're profiting off of it, that should be that. But on far too many occasions, particularly with the NFL, even more so than the traditional corporate America entity, the fact remains is that they don't stop there. Professional sports don't tend to stop there. They've now asked athletes to be more than just marquee athletes who are marketable and thus can assist in them buffering their wallets and padding their wallets and making more money. Now they're asking them to essentially be role models and parents and help parenting kids and help us raise these kids, not just to conduct yourself in a certain fashion, but do so in a manner that we are receptive to, because we define whether or not we like it or not. You might have people that are against Colin Kaepernick, for example, Will. It's not stopping the NFL from making money. It's not stopping the NFL product from being supported. You might have guys that may not know how to act, might get themselves in trouble with the law or whatever the case may be. But then they'll go to court, the case will be resolved or whatever the case may be. But then they turn around and you're lamenting those state of affairs. Of course, I'm not talking about anything extreme like domestic violence and murder and stuff like that. But I'm saying every little thing these guys do, they're under a microscope. And even though it doesn't negatively influence the bottom line, you're still riding them because you want to approve of every little thing they do. And it ain't just about how they play and how well they market themselves. You then want to dictate other facets of their life and how they disseminate a particular image or perception about themselves. You want to have control in manipulating all of those things. So when you do that, but then you engage in hypocrisy in the minds of those players you are exploiting, you now have raised their ire and their angst against you because they're looking at you and saying, when does it stop? You don't say that about everybody in corporate America, not every entity in corporate America. But at times, players have been able to say that about the NFL, and that's where the problem lies.
You know, I'll just make this final point, guys. Is the NFL somehow has become the the boogeyman of everything. And I don't know why. Maybe it's the concussion issue. Maybe I think it has to do with football's dominance in America, sports. I think that its inherently masculine and violent nature has somehow managed to become the embodiment of evil. You're going to look up one day to keep calling football bad. You're going to look up one day and keep calling it evil, and you're going to see the ratings go down. And you're going to see the NFL suffer. By the way, ratings aren't going so good right now.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have a world where football might not be so good. Do you want that world? Does Richard Sherman want that world? I'd say football right now isn't the villain you want it to be.
It's not football, it's the NFL, because it's this monolith in American culture. And so you're absolutely right. It takes shots out of proportion to what it deserves. And yet here, Richard Sherman, by your own admission to begin with, is simply describing a real relationship between owners and players.
Listen, we do have to go to break. Obviously, you're all cerebral men, so is Richard Sherman, and that was a really intelligent conversation. Listening to all you guys had strong takes on it, and I know it's probably just the beginning of more conversations on this subject and in the ratings, for that matter, as well, how they're affected. You brought up a good point there as well. Will, thank you so much
Always
for
fun.
being with us. When we come back, was last night's game another example of why the NFL should get rid of Thursday night football? The guys will tell you that after the break. A.J. Green stole the show in Cincinnati last night with 173 yards and a touchdown in the Bengals' 22-7 win over the Dolphins on Thursday Night Football. Beside Green's big night, Max, you called it, the game was mostly about field goals and poor offense. The NFL has scheduled Thursday night games since 2006. Stephen A., there could be an argument that the NFL is watering down their schedule now with Thursday night. Do you think they need to get rid of these games?
I never thought they should have had it to begin with. I've always been an adversary to the Thursday night games. I think that NFL games should be played on Sundays and Mondays. I think college football games should be played on Saturdays, not Fridays, like tonight's Washington-Stanford game. And I think Friday night should be reserved for high school. Football is a very physical sport. It's very, very violent. And obviously, it's incredibly complicated as well for a lot of football players out there. You're in the film room for a reason. You're studying for a reason. And more importantly, you're trying to give yourself time for your bodies to heal. And since we're talking about nationally televised games, everybody doesn't get to be on Thursday night football. I remember reading a report from Pro Football Talk about a year ago where it talked about disparities that existed in terms of nationally televised games, if I remember correctly. I think Buffalo had like 29 and somebody else had like 12. I remember in the 2015 season, it was supposed to be a 16.3-point differential in terms of games being played on Thursday nights compared to the games that were played on Sundays. The quality of football that is played significantly dissipates compared to what you see on Sundays or Monday nights. And I think that when you take that into account, along with supposedly being concerned about player safety and player health, it flies in the face of all of that by having a game on Thursdays. I think when critics of the NFL that allude to the NFL cartel per se, talking about how they just come up with new and different ways to try and make more money, even though the owners say yes to it because they want the money. Religiously, almost all of them complain about having to play on a Thursday night because they really, really, really do not want to do it. And the remedy for it, some people have speculated, would be only playing a Thursday night game after a bye week. The fact that you have to throw in all of those considerations, and that it disrupts your flow, and that it potentially puts some teams at a disadvantage when we know good and well that everybody should be playing on the same playing field. I just think it's something that's not worth it. It's simply something to make the owners more money. I don't think it's of extra benefit to the fan base out there, and I think it's completely unnecessary. College football should be on Saturdays. NFL football should be on Sundays and Mondays. That's the way it used to be. That is the way that it should stay. It should have never been a Thursday night game to begin with, as far as I'm concerned.
Max, one thing before you respond. Of course, the short week is challenging for everyone, but every team does play a game on Thursday nights, just to be clear on that.
You sound like Dana Carvey's grumpy old man from back in the day on Saturday Night Live, Stephen A. I don't like things now compared to the way they used to be. Look, is it a scheme to make the owners more money? You bet it is. Is it? And we just got done talking with Will about it, and we were debating, the nature of exploitation in sports and whether full contact sports are more exploitative than other sports, and I think they are. We'll disagree, but I think they are. And this is a good segue into this conversation, because Thursday games in a full contact sport, a dangerous sport, are a little more dangerous. It is added exploitation to line the owners' pockets, sure. But how do the owners line their pockets? With money from and interest from the fans. So as a consumer of football, I love Thursday games. Am I getting the same product I'm getting on Sundays or Mondays? Nope. I realize it's an inferior product. Still a pretty good product. I mean, I was playing daily fantasy yesterday with a bunch of friends and watching the game and interested in what happened, and it was good. I got football on a Thursday. It used to be. Here's the issue with the NFL. It's basically a once-a-week sport. Baseball's every day you get it. Basketball's every other day, but the way the schedules work, you can watch a high-level basketball game every day. Football, Saturdays for college football, Sundays for pro football, except that you also get a game on Monday, and then now you have a college game on a Friday, and now you have an NFL game on a Thursday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you get to scratch that itch. I love it as a fan. As a consumer, I love it. And by the way, to just throw your hands up in the air and say, well, you could have it after a bye week, but that takes extra planning, so to hell with it. No, do a little extra planning. There's nothing wrong with having it after a bye week.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, scratching too much ain't good for anybody. That's number one. Number two, you've already acknowledged that playing the Thursday night games are inferior. It's inferior in terms of compared to what we see on Sundays and Mondays. The fact that you have an inferior product 3 days earlier speaks to the damage that it could potentially do. That's not what the NFL is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be even keeled no matter what. Number three, and more importantly, I don't believe this is a partnership, because these are decisions made by the league and the owners, which is why it's called the cartel. I don't know. I think the players, even if they capitulate to it, they acquiesce to it, it's something that is forced upon them as opposed to something that's agreed upon. And that's problematic in and of itself. The fact of the matter is the owners are forcing this. Now, obviously, the players have to sign off on it because the money is there to be made and they want the money. So the NFL makes them play, or the owners make them play that Thursday night game. But the reality is that if they had their druthers, they would rather play on Sundays or Monday night, and it shouldn't be that their money would be compromised because of it.
Look, listen,
so that's the way
preseason I agree with. 4 preseason games is unnecessary. The players aren't really getting paid for those games anyway. The owners are lining their pockets. It's too much. It's a full contact sport. You want guys in your team hurt, etc. Yes. But a Thursday game, if everyone has to play it, and as you say, you can line it up after the bye, I mean, there are ways to figure this thing out that make more sense.
By the way, I need clarification.
The bottom line is this, Stephen A. Do you like football or not? Do you want to watch it on a Thursday?
No, it's not the bottom line.
Do you really need to pay attention to your family on a Thursday night, or can you lose yourself in a football game? That's the question.
You with the three,
I think most Americans would say football.
You with the three daughters that miss half the games because of that is going to sit up here and ask, do you really want to spend time with your daughter? Really, Max? Come on now. But Molly, I have a question.
Right now, Pookie,
I have a question.
I have AJ Green going in the Thursday night game.
I have a question. I have a question before we leave.
Yep.
When you say everyone plays on a Thursday night, you mean through the course of 17 weeks and 16 games, all 32 teams play at least once on Thursday night?
Correct.
Yeah, because 16 matchups, 32 teams.
Correct.
Oh, no. I was asking because I'm saying that's not something I knew.
Yeah.
All right.
Interesting argument, though, because you could argue that it waters down the product. And then, of course, if you love football, you want to see more of it.
You watched the game last night?
Of course.
Yeah, me too.
All right, let's leave it there. Coming up next, he's running away with the Heisman, but will Deshaun Watson have anything to say about a big weekend in college football? Max Kellerman's calling one matchup the biggest of the weekend. Jonathan Vilma will join us to break it down. That's next. 5 class. Death Valley, as we mentioned, Louisville and Clemson. Stephen A. picked Clemson. Max picked Louisville. We welcome in our college football analyst, Jonathan Vilma. So glad to have you with us. Jonathan, I'm going to put you on the spot here, okay?
Well, I'm getting the death stare
you are?
from Max
right now. A little side-eye from Max. Stephen A. is not in studio, so you can't get his side-eye. Who is right?
Stephen A. is right.
Oh,
Clemson is going to win. Stop giving me the death stare. Max, come on, man. This is why Clemson is going to win. You have Deshaun Watson, who's been there, done that. He has the experience. He's been to the championship game last year. He's played in big games. Lamar Jackson has played in one big game, and now it's a true road test. The second is Clemson has had now 2 weeks to prepare for, after watching the FSU game, they've had 2 weeks to prepare for Lamar Jackson and capitalize on the mistakes that FSU made, i.e. having defensive ends trying to defend Lamar Jackson on the edge one-on-one when they have absolutely no chance of stopping Lamar Jackson. Switch that up and put a linebacker now on the zone read for Lamar Jackson, let the defensive end crash down. Feather the quarterback and contain him. You can't stop Lamar Jackson. He's a tremendous talent. But you can contain him, you can slow him down, and I think Clemson can do that. And of course, we already know how explosive they are offensively.
Look, I get what you're saying. I know why a lot of people, I think most people would say, look, Clemson coming off the national title game where Deshaun Watson, who's the Heisman favorite coming into this year, I think the smart money had Deshaun Watson, has now more experience, right? Like, you know, and he almost upset Alabama as it was, and now has more experience. And people don't really still believe in Louisville and believe in Lamar Jackson because he's doing it with his legs and because they haven't won on the road. Petrino 0-10 on the road against top teams, top 15 teams. But let's really look at what Louisville is so far this year. You say they got that one, he has that one big game. What they did in that big game, both sides of the ball, the defense too now. Yes, they were at home, but both sides of the ball, they turned FSU, who, by the way, you know, Ole Miss, FSU had to come back on. So did Alabama. They turned FSU into Marshall or Syracuse or Charlotte, same team. They whooped them. I mean, the game was over. It was garbage time in the second half. So now you say, but now this is on the road against a good team. You think Petrino's never going to beat a good team on the road? This is the development, the evolution of a team. First, you learn how to win. Then you learn how to win on the road. It is time that this Louisville team takes the next step. And if you look at their trajectory, I think it's right now.
Stephen A.?
I can get where he's coming from because Lamar Jackson is no joke. But I think that if you're Clemson, look at what they employed against Georgia Tech. What they did was they made sure to apply pressure from the outside to keep the quarterback contained. And obviously the interior was obviously decent enough as well. But I think that when you look at what Louisville did, particularly against Florida State, with Derwin James being out and really not having any pressure applied to them from the outside as well, they were able to operate in big space. And as a result, Lamar Jackson is just going to eat you alive. I don't think that's going to happen against Clemson. I certainly don't think that's going to happen in Death Valley. And I think that Deshaun Watson, being that individual that showed up in that national championship game, I think that, you know, when you consider now him having to go against Lamar Jackson, I think it's going to apply pressure to Lamar Jackson even more because I think Deshaun Watson is going to show up in this particular game, which is going to put even more pressure on Louisville's offense. I think ultimately somebody other than Lamar Jackson is going to have to show up and play big for them, and I don't think it's going to happen. That's why I'm flowing with Clemson. It's going to be a good game, no doubt, and you can't underestimate Louisville. But I think in a game of this magnitude, based on what we saw from Clemson, I'm inclined to pick Clemson in a game of this magnitude, nationally televised prime time.
I'm also going Clemson as well. We have another big program that we want to get to, some college football news with them as well. So Alabama backup quarterback Blake Barnett left the program this week, and Nick Saban had some very interesting comments about it. Take a listen.
I think the culture has changed a little bit. I think, you know, there's certain pride that people have in competition. There's certain things that I was taught growing up about not quitting and, you know, seeing things through. I think if I'd have come home and told my dad that I was going to quit the team, I think he'd have kicked me out of the house. I don't think I'd had a place to stay. You know, sometimes you didn't have the choices. My dad used to say, the grass always is greener on top of the septic tank.
Stephen A., I know you have the utmost respect for Nick Saban, but what did you think about these particular comments?
I thought it was very hypocritical on his part, and I was very disappointed in his comments. And you know me, he's my favorite coach in college football. I love me some Nick Saban. He's the man. But in this particular instance, he's wrong. Let's harken back to 2006 and in January of 2007. In January of 2007, Nick Saban left the Miami Dolphins as its head coach with 3 years left on his contract to take over Alabama. Just a month earlier, less than a month earlier, in December of 2006, Nick Saban looked at the media and said, I guess I have to say this, I will not be the coach at Alabama. So essentially he lied or he changed his mind. Whatever the case may be, he had 3 years left on his contract following a 6-10 season in Miami and left that contract. And it speaks to what my problem is with the collegiate ranks. Coaches are given latitudes that the players themselves are not given. I'm one of those people who's a proponent of a player should be allowed to have the right to get out of his scholarship and go and play for another team the very next year. If the coach can sit up there and leave a team and go and coach another team without having to sit out a year, why is it fair for the coach to be able to do that, but the players not to be able to do that? That's my issue here.
Really quickly, Jonathan, I'll let you go. I just want to say, you're pointing out the hypocrisy correctly, Stephen A. Smith, in what Coach Saban is saying, and he's an incredibly great coach. There's no denying that. But I want to use stronger language here. I find this slimy of him. For him to couch this in moral or ethical terms, or by assailing the character of a kid who's making a choice that affects his eligibility and his future, to couch it in moral terms like or character terms like he's a quitter because he's making the same choice Nick Saban did, that's just slimy. It's transparent. It's wrong, and Nick Saban ought to be ashamed of himself for making that statement.
Yeah, I agree. I think Nick Saban, we have to look at the other perspective of Nick Saban. He's saying, well, even if you were not going to start for the next 3 years, I still have to coach you. I still have a scholarship used up for you, and I can't take that scholarship away and go to another 5-star recruit. So Nick Saban's looking at it from a very narrow window, and I can understand his perspective. I agree with you guys. I think it's very hypocritical what he's saying. But he's saying, man, if I have to stick with you for the next 3 years, 4 years, because I can't pull your scholarship, it's not a yearly thing where, hey, you're not playing well, sorry, you got to go. I don't know how you're going to get your education, but it's not going to be here. He's saying, well, then you can't quit on me.
Yeah, right. But it's an issue are the rules, not Nick, not the kid's character.
I hear
and
you.
now how the rules negatively affect Nick Saban.
Let's also remember something very important. The kid Jalen Hurts, who's starting for him now, is a true freshman. Blake Barnett is leaving because a true freshman is starting ahead of him. And chances are he ain't going anywhere for the next several years. So what is this guy Blake Barnett supposed to do? Okay, I can't quarterback for Nick Saban at Alabama, but I may be able to play somewhere else. Nick Saban wants him to stay there and just sit on the bench and then label him a quitter because otherwise it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's totally wrong.
Yeah,
Max is right.
With the rules, not the kid.
No, for sure. Stephen A., this next subject is going to put a smile on your face. Le'Veon Bell returns this weekend for the black and yellow. Yes, sir. The guys will tell you what to expect after the break. Jonathan, so good having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
First Take is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. And Nissan, innovation that excites.
You know, you guys saw that. We lost to just about every element of that matchup. They outcoached us. They outplayed us. They were better fundamentally, tackling and so forth.
Blaze pumping. He is floating it, and it's complete the hump at the 50, the 45. He's on his feet at the 30, the 20. Cuts back at the 10, the 5. He is in. Darren Sproles.
We got our ass kicked. I'll simply say it like that.
We got work to do, obviously, as we come here with one agenda, and that's to play winning football, and obviously we didn't do that today.
The Steelers are coming off a bad loss to the Eagles in Philly last Sunday, but their offense getting a big boost this weekend. Le'Veon Bell returns from his 3-game suspension. Stephen A., what do you expect from the Steelers with Bell returning?
Well, first of all, I expect the running game to return. D'Angelo Williams has struggled at least the last couple of weeks or so because he is 33 years of age and he's had to carry a hefty workload. But I expect the Steelers defense to look a little bit better. Alex Smith doesn't make a lot of mistakes, but he's not a game changer per se, even though he has the potential to do a lot of different things. In the end, what it comes down to is that the Steelers were an absolute embarrassment last week. I was incredibly ashamed of what I saw against the Philadelphia Eagles. They should have been ashamed of themselves. And they should come out ready to play football this week because as far as I'm concerned, they've had 2 weeks off because they certainly didn't show up last week. It was just a disgraceful performance, maybe the worst performance I ever saw by this team in the Mike Tomlin era. I think they know it. I think everybody else knows it, and we'll see what happens. Marcus Peters is no joke for Kansas City. Antonio Brown and others should have their work cut out for them. Marcus Wheaton doesn't need to be dropping 3 passes like he did before. He needs to do better and help out Antonio Brown. We'll see what happens, but Le'Veon Bell Bell is definitely going to be an upgrade, if for no other reason, not just because he's gifted, but because he brings fresh legs, per se, to the equation, and they desperately need that from the running back spot, as well as catching passes out of the backfield. I think it helps, and I think as a result, the Steelers win this game.
Chiefs are just a good team, and I love this game, and it's tempting to take them against the Steelers the way the Steelers looked last week, and given what the Chiefs bring to the table. However, I think, Stephen A., as you pointed out, they were humiliated, the Steelers were. Yes, at Philly, but still in an all-Pennsylvania rivalry-type game, they were humiliated. They're coming home. They have the best running back in the game, and apologies to Adrian Peterson, even before his weak numbers so far this year, if you want to blame the Minnesota offensive line. But when Le'Veon Bell over the last several seasons has been on the field, I can't believe anyone would argue another running back over him. He is clearly the best running back in the game, all-around running back in the game. You're getting that guy back after you've been humiliated in a rivalry game, a high-profile game because the quality of your opponent. I love this matchup. I think the Steelers win in an overtime-type game. It goes down to the wire, maybe overtime, and I think the Steelers pull it out. I think Le'Veon Bell is a big boost for them.
Well, I hope he is, because he needs to be. He's got a lot of making up to do, because remember, even though he's coming back, it's not like he was coming back from injury. He got injured last year, missed the second half of the season because of it. He always seems to get injured against Cincinnati because of their low blows, you know, the low blows that they throw in his direction in some fashion. But in this particular game, he's been out for the first 3 games of the season because he was suspended, you know, weed issues and beyond. So he's got some making up to do. He's got to be dependable. He's got to be somebody that the Steelers can rely upon, because a legitimate argument could be made is that the Steelers have underachieved in the years that he's been there, because this wasn't the first time he's been suspended. So he's got to step up to the plate and do everything that he can to make amends. And he clearly has the talent to do so, and I think he'll put it off.
Their defense has got to get a lot better. You know, last year it's like, well, if they have a bend but don't break defense and they can stay healthy on offense, maybe they could go all the way. It didn't happen. They couldn't stay healthy on offense. Still really good. And the defense wasn't enough to overcome that. This year they showed improvement early against the run, and you had reason to believe, boy, this Pittsburgh defense is coming around, and then it was nowhere to be seen against Philadelphia last week. So that's the big if there is, does the Steelers defense show up against the Chiefs? Assuming it's a bend but don't break style defense, I think they can win this game.
After last weekend, they're certainly going to be focused, and we know Le'Veon Bell have fresh legs. But I want to get to another subject. We asked you guys earlier in the show if you are buying Dez Bryant's excuse. Max and I were buying it. The results are in. America is with Stephen A. 69% say no, not buying Dez's excuse. Stephen A., your thoughts?
Well, like I said, I'm not judging them harshly or whatever. My reason for not buying it is that it's still unacceptable. It's only acceptable in the world of Jason Garrett, because even though you might say something to reprimand them, at the end of the day, you ain't going to really do anything, because no one has any reason to fear Jason Garrett, because they consider him a puppet for Jerry Jones. That's really what this comes down to, and they need a firm hand at the head coaching position.
It's not an issue of me buying the excuse. It's an immature decision he made. It's a bad decision. He should make better decisions. But does it reflect the right stuff about Dez Bryant? Is that the kind of guy you want on your squad? I think the answer is yes. He'll do anything, including avoiding MRIs, whatever, to stay on the field, for his teammates and his team. You want that guy.
And that's also where I agreed with you, not the actual buying it part, but what you just explained. Guess what, guys?
Well, I'm glad y'all agree with each other to go into the weekend.
Start.
Enjoy yourselves.
That's good.